Welcome back to the Grow Your B2B SaaS podcast. In this podcast, I interview industry experts on how to grow a B2B SaaS on any topic related to it. Season 3 has come to an end. In Season 3, I interviewed 20 industry experts on how to grow your B2B SaaS. More importantly, I will ask them the exact same question. What kind of advice would you give a SaaS founder who's now on their journey growing to 10K monthly recurring revenue? We combined all the answers into this episode, so you're going to receive the advice from 20 experts in one single episode. Before you hear the guest speak, I will let you know who it is so you can listen to the full episode later. My request, if you like this content, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, a follow, a review, so we can help other founders like yourself. For now, let's just dive right in. In episode 1, I interviewed Wes Bush regarding product-led growth.
So I was just actually helping a company do this recently, which is fun. When I was helping them, basically what we ended up doing is going through that go-to-market motion, but you go through the iterations way faster. So you initially start with, okay, what's our vision, strategy, hypothesis? Here, who's our ideal kind of user and buyer? Let's get clear on that. Then we go through, okay, what could be like a compelling offer that we would go through this part? And then what is the experience? How do we get people to deliver that value as soon as possible? And at any stage, if you start feeling like, oh, we're not getting that much synergy or traction, you just go right back to the vision, strategy. Then you go to the user and everything else. And so when we did that a few iterations, what's cool about this, I didn't mention at the beginning of this podcast, but there's really 3 things you need to find like PMF or product market fit. There's your company, which is like, what are you really good at? More specifically, very early stage, which is 10K for sure. It's what are you good at as a founder? And then you also got to align, who do you serve best? Who do you love serving? Who are you passionate about serving? What problems do you love helping people with? So that's like a second piece. The last thing you got to figure out, which is like your product and which will get you out of that 10K range, which is like, how do you create the most value? So you have those 3 things, fun Venn diagram. And at the middle is like that synergy. And you're really trying to define and identify those 3 things, and you'll create that synergy that will help you scale out of that area.
In episode 2, I interviewed Asia Arangio on how to audit your SaaS growth.
If you're just starting out and you're trying to get to 10K in MRR, your ultimate mission is going to be, it's called revenue cohort retention. Your mission is to get to, let's say, 60% after 12 months. At 6 months, it should ideally be 60+%. And that's on the way to 10K. And the reason why is because if you're not familiar with revenue cohort retention, basically what that means is the revenue that you've generated this month, how much of that revenue do you retain every month after that from that same bucket of revenue that you got this month? And if you use Profit, there's a chart for you for free. It'll show you this. Baremetrics has it too, and so does ChartMogul. I feel like there's a couple of others that have this chart. But if you're using any of those tools, they probably have a revenue cohort retention report for you for free right now. And your goal is to get to that metric. And the reason why is because if you don't, you're going to have to replace that 10K MRR every 6 to 12 months if you have less than 60% at 6 months. And the way that you get there is by focusing on the things that you already know about. So you already know about getting to product market fit. You already know about, okay, what are the channels for acquiring the best paying customer? Who is my best paying customer? Why do they buy it? You already know about that process, or I'm assuming you do at least. But when I audit growth, the first thing I'm looking at is revenue cohort retention. It doesn't matter what size of the business it is. And I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, the highest growth companies, the ones that are like, they're just like taking off, they have 120%, typically, like it's 100 to 120% revenue retention at 12 months. And then the ones who are in between, at the 12-month mark, they're usually getting 80%. They should be getting 100, but even 80% still is technically pretty good. If it's 60% or less at 12 months, this business is going to have to replace its revenue every 12 months. And that's a grind. Basically means that marketing has to work extremely hard, so does sales. And you really only grow by focusing on acquisition. But we all know that acquisition is getting more expensive, which means that your cost of revenue might actually be really high. And also just generally, it's not going to be as efficient as a funnel. But that's what we typically see. And it's a little bit different for B2C. So B2C SaaS, we can see the 60 to 80% at the 12-month mark revenue cohort retention, and it tends to be pretty healthy. But ideally, we're still in the 100% if we can get there. But if you're 10K MRR, yeah, I would say at the 6-month mark, get more than 60%. That's a good sign if you're getting better and better cohort retention on the revenue side.
In episode 3, I interviewed Emmerich Arnault on his lessons learned bootstrapping a B2B SaaS to 20 million ARR in revenue.
The first 10K of MRR, they're just working 15 hours a day, weekends included. That's what I did. There's no exception to that. If you are fooling yourself with freaking work-life balance, don't do that. Don't start a business. Don't aim to go to 10K MRR. It's not going to work, especially if you're bootstrap and you and your co-founder are just figuring it out and you don't have money and you're not sure what you do. There is no shortcut than working your ass off for the first year or two. No shortcut. That's my only advice. So be aware of that. Be aware that you're going to make great sacrifices. You're not going to see your friends. You're not going to be there for your family as you would love to. And your vacation are going to be 2 weeks a year, which, by the way, for an American is the norm. But for a French person, it's not. But yeah, be aware of the amount of sacrifices that you're going to have to make. That's my only advice.
In episode 4, I interviewed Kevin Dorsey on how to improve your SaaS sales.
So if you're trying to get to 10K, you just need to be taking massive outbound action. Like you should be talking to 10, 15, 20 people a day about your product. You should be sending videos to your ideal prospects. Like to get to 10K, you need to just be taking massive action. So often I see founders at that stage focusing on things that don't matter yet. They're working on branding. They're working on trying to get the website to look good. They're, whatever else, like going to conferences. Like, no, if I'm trying to get to 10, like there is not a world that if you are showing up every single day and you are doing 10 to 15, 20 outbound videos per day for 90 days straight to your ideal personas, that you don't get to that 10K. So when you're trying to get to 10K, you have to be taking massive action out. You need to get it in front of as many people as you possibly can. And that does not come from a LinkedIn post. It does not come from a webinar. You need to get to 10K. That's my biggest tip is you need to know your personas. You need to know the problem you solve, but then you need to be taking massive action out. And if you're afraid to take that action out, you need to sit down and really talk to yourself and be like, okay, if I thought this was a game-changing product, this is going to change the world, and you're afraid to put it in front of people, it's a problem, right? Yeah. So to get to 10K, nail the problems you solve, and then you have to be taking massive action out. And to my founders listening, you have to do it. This is not something you can go hire some little SDR to go and do. You have to take those first steps to get yourself to 10K.
In episode 5, I interviewed Sean Ellis on how to implement the growth hacking mindset in your B2B SaaS.
To get to 10K monthly recurring revenue, biggest thing there is you're going to need to experiment with channels a lot because people need to discover the product. But channels only work if activation works well. So you need to spend, I would basically in the early sub 10K MRR be going back and forth between new customer activation and new channel discovery. So a month on one, a month on the other, a month on one, a month on the other. And yeah, you might have some people who are constantly owning that, but having the team, having a growth team kind of bouncing back and forth between those. The only kind of caveat there that I would say is when you're sub 10,000 MR, there is a very good chance that you have a false indicator of product market fit. So I would make sure that you're going back and monitoring the metrics that relate to product market fit. So one of those being retention. Am I actually able to retain usage from the people who are coming in and buying the product, or if I have a free version that are coming in and signing up for the product? The leading indicator of that is the one that I mentioned, just asking users, how would you feel if you could no longer use this product? Generally, when I see around 40% or more of the users saying that they'd be very disappointed without it, those are companies that I tend to see grow over time. And so that's a kind of a quicker way if you don't have really good retention tracking in place to at least get some indication if you have that product market fit. But those would be the 3 focus areas: making sure you got product market fit, and then making sure that you are sending enough new people in, but that you are also doing enough cycles to make sure they have a great experience with the product.
In episode 6, I interviewed Dirk Salmer on how to prepare your SaaS for an exit.
Listen to your customers. So don't talk too much to investors and other people and your friends where you may get confirmation for your idea. So talk to customers and listen to them. I think that's also what a few VC funded SaaS founders are doing wrong. So really try to listen to your customers, and you as a founder should have these conversations yourself. So thinking your first hire should be like a salesperson who talks to the customers is also not a good idea. And I would say iterate quickly and don't hold on to your initial idea, because pretty sure potential customers may tell you that's not the thing they are looking for. But if you iterate, if you listen to them, if you iterate quickly, I think you will ultimately get to a good result.
In episode 7, I interviewed Walter Rehberger on how to price your B2B SaaS to accelerate growth.
So you're probably struggling or working on your product market fit. So review your packaging a lot. So the packaging of your SaaS is even more important than pricing at the moment. It is okay if you lose a bit of extra euro, you have one unhappy customer that pays too much, and then renegotiate to the proper value next year. I would spend your efforts on the packaging a lot. Make sure you have your ideal customer profile. That's usually something that when you're still growing is still something that is, you had an idea when you started your product, and then later on you can get distracted, like, oh, but this can also be used for this segment. This can also be, don't get too distracted, because it also means you cannot really test your pricing model if you have all these separate types of companies using your solution, because then you can never really understand the value, or you can never really gauge what their value is. So keep your focus in your packaging and pricing. Don't deviate too much at the beginning, is what I would say, and test and reiterate. Don't feel that, okay, I cannot change my pricing twice here. That's too much. I don't think that's too much. It's fine.
In episode 8, I interviewed Simon Hooiberg on how to get your first 1,000 users for your B2B SaaS.
So to get the first 10K MRR, focus on things that are at that level of where your business is currently at. So at this point, there's going to be a certain level of grinding. You're going to reach out, but you reaching out to the first 5, 10, 25 or so users and bring them on board, and understand that you are seeing a lot of advertisement all the time for all kinds of SaaS products. So these users, they don't really owe you anything, and they are insanely valuable for your SaaS product at this early stage. So you don't need to listen to the people who say, don't sell your SaaS too cheap, don't offer lifetime for free. I will say in this early stage, you're absolutely not devaluing your product by getting the first 25 users on board and offering them a free account. What you are valuing appropriately is how much these early users are actually worth. Next is a long and hard content game. You want to really be active on social media, put yourself out there, make sure you write a decent amount of blog posts, put YouTube's videos on YouTube, make sure you show up on social media every day, even though there's going to be long stretches where you struggle with engagement. It seems like no one's interested. Just keep going. This phase is long and hard.
In episode 9, I interviewed Maya Voye on how to achieve product market fit for your B2B SaaS.
So 10K is probably already in your phone book or your email list. And I would just go through it and select a couple of prospects, present a demo, and just try to make deals with them, get their testimonials, ask for future recommendation. And this is like easy peasy, because 10K is not a lot of money. And if you are any good and working in tech, you would be generating more as a freelancer. So building this product, of course, it's much more scalable, but I don't think that you should overthink it. You can just either do it from your phone book. You can decide to spend some money on ads and to see how you can naturally capture the demand that is already existing. I don't think that it should be complicated, and you definitely don't need an agency to do a strategy how to get to the first 10K. You should do it.
In episode 10, I interviewed Guillaume Mobetti on how to implement a profit-led approach for your SaaS.
I think the first thing is, are you passionate about the problem? Because I see too many people who just want to make quick cash. And the reality is, like a SaaS, you need to be patient. It might take 18, 24 months just for you to start generating a good traction and a good revenue, or even reaching 10K. You've seen a lot of articles where how did we reach 0 to 10K in 24 hours, etc. But This is not the norm. If you look at like how much it take on average for people to reach like to 1 million, I think it was something like 800 days or something like that. So it's like almost 3 years. And for me, this counts only the companies that actually reached 1 million, which means that a lot of them actually failed, never reached it, etc., etc. So you need to be patient. And in my opinion, people fail when they choose the wrong problem, they're not passionate enough about it, and they don't talk to users. So if you manage to do these 3 things and have these 3 box like checks, it's all about showing up daily, working your ass off, and eventually it will pay off.
This podcast episode is sponsored by Reditus. Reditus helps B2B SaaS companies to set up, manage, and grow an affiliate program. In short, it means you're asking other people, affiliates, to promote your SaaS. You would only pay the affiliates a kickback fee when they deliver you paid clients, making it a very cost-effective and scalable way to grow your MRR. See more at getreditus.com. In episode 11, I interviewed Stefan Avicion on how to achieve explosive growth and increase profitability.
What you need to do is you need to speak to clients. You need to speak to clients all the time, because the behavior and the value that you're giving and the demands and wishes the customers have, they also change over time. All depend on whether we have wars and not have wars, we have COVID, we don't have COVID, we have expensive housings, we have cheap housings, we have a crisis, we don't have a crisis, we have all the VCs spitting out money to any crazy founder who created whatever B2B SaaS and stuff like that. So everything just changes over time as well. Nothing is static. Nothing is static. So that's why you have to continue speaking to customers, or at least have someone to do that job for you.
In episode 12, I interviewed Chris Walker on how to unify sales, marketing, and SDRs in your go-to-market strategy.
Figure out one channel that you can repeatably get customers on. If you're at 10K in revenue, you don't have much. You don't have a team, you don't have any money for ads, you don't have much. Figure out one organic channel that you can repeatably get customers. That's going to most likely be outbound or an organic social network. So that's what I would focus on. Then when you get to $1 million a year run rate, 80K a month, start to rethink it. But I like most businesses, including SaaS businesses, can grow from 0 to minimum 5 million, but from potentially 0 to at least 20 million using one acquisition channel. And it's just about planning, does that acquisition channel scale? Where our customers be there? Did we get the timing right, which oftentimes we don't have control over? And did we push it hard? Did we understand our customers in the channel well enough to push it for everything that it had? I've been able to do that with LinkedIn and a podcast. There's companies that have been able to do that with LinkedIn that are not me, and there's a variety of other channels. And so I think it's really just about getting one channel to work really well to repeatably acquire customers at that stage.
In episode 13, I interviewed Chris Orlop on how to turn discovery calls into customers.
I would say spend most of your time learning everything you can about your buyer, right? Put sales technique aside just for a minute and become an expert on your buyer to the point where you can peer into their soul. That's one of the most valuable things that you can do as a sales professional is know your market, right? What are their fears, frustrations, hopes, dreams, aspirations? What are some of the conversations they have in their head as it relates to your value proposition? That's the best thing you can do. If you have that knowledge and then you learn discovery, it becomes so much easier. If you're great at surface level discovery, but you don't know your market, you're still not going to have great discovery calls because you won't know what to ask next.
In episode 14, I interviewed Cameron Hay on how do investors analyze SaaS businesses.
It's really just going out and speaking to your clients regularly, understanding if clients have left, why they've left, and make sure if they're wanting you to provide additional services and there's other ways that you can help serve them. Just make sure that you're using them to help create your product roadmap, because that's always the best way. The people who already use your product to help them grow your business. And we as a business are constantly speaking to investors and finding out what it is that they need help with, both as funds and also on their portfolio companies, and making sure that if there is something else that we can do to help that we're pivoting and making sure we can service that.
In episode 15, I interviewed Matt Wolach on how to scale your SaaS to 1 million MRR using processes.
So I think in the early days, the biggest focus needs to be on the customer. So really the ones that I see struggle are the ones who don't truly know their market. And on my own show, Scale Your SaaS, where I interview software founders as well, like you, we talk about what is your biggest thing that you learned in your early days? And almost all of them say, I'm so glad I got to know my customers. The ones who are successful, they have tons of conversations. And I've landed it. You need at least 25 to 50 customer conversations, not sales conversations, but purely just ask them, what are you struggling with? What keeps you up at night? What are you trying to accomplish? What do you hope to gain? And really just understanding what they're going through. And you're going to start to see patterns after 25 or 50. And once you see those patterns, it makes it easier to develop your product to match that market and what their needs are. It makes it easier to set up your marketing messaging and all of your funnels so that you can get that to align with their needs and how they work. And you can make sure your sales process and your sales scripts align with your market really well. It just creates so much value for you to know inside and out all about your prospects, your market, and what they need.
In episode 16, I interviewed Cristobal Alonso on the unsexy truth about startup success.
Hire well, so really put a lot of effort in hiring. Test quickly, as many things as you need, but with focus. So don't test 4 things at a time. So test one thing quickly, works or doesn't work next, right? So until you are 10, 15K, 20K, the errors, the mistakes are very cheap. So you are in a moment in which you can test a lot of things. So do not set into what is working right away. Try to find and testing as many things as possible. I think that is a fundamental thing. And the third one I would say is ask your customers, why are they buying your product? Stop making assumptions why they're buying it and ask them. And I think it's funny because most corporates don't talk to the customer. They're too big to do market research. And I think startups are different because they are built by talking to customers. And I think you need to make sure that you're not losing that early on. There is so many tools right now you can actually get way more content, but keep asking your customers, why are you buying us? I think that's a fundamental piece of advice that needs to be done in that one.
In episode 17, I interviewed Dustin House on how to set up affiliate marketing for your B2B SaaS.
My first bit of advice is to recognize who the players are in this industry and what a referral from them would mean to your company. So whatever that looks like in terms of the reach that they have from their existing audience, it's always going to be very difficult to tell, but you can't get on their radar unless you start asking the right questions. So I'm going to reach out to big players in the space and see if there's a fit in any of their content to get them on board with our product. And if I find that fit, I'm going to stop at nothing until I get a hard no. And people give up on this way too quickly. So that's always my first step. Find the right affiliate partners that are going to be difference makers and build a list of those and start doing the outreach today when you're just starting out this affiliate program, because you're never going to give up on them.
In episode 18, I interviewed Alina Vandenberg on how Chili Piper is becoming a billion-dollar company.
I think that every industry is different. Every product is different. I can only speak to what has worked for us. Like you have a pen and paper there. That's how we went to the ideal customer profile. We went with my notebook and I would draw all sorts of ideas of how our product would solve their pain point. And now that's what if we do it this way, or if we do it this other way, would you pay money to buy this? And when I found that they would pay 20K a year in advance for whatever I was doodling on a piece of paper, I knew I had something. So you really have to validate your price points, and you really have to understand what people are willing to part off and how fast you can get there. You really have to validate where money goes.
In episode 19, I interviewed Adam Robinson on how to build a billion-dollar business in a year.
Everybody in the beginning does not realize how precious money is. right? When you're trying to bootstrap, and especially when you raise like angel or whatever. But when you're trying to bootstrap, regardless of whether it feels this way right now, there will be a point in the next 12 to 18 months where you're like, I am down to my last dollar. Trying to be aware of that and not spend money before you absolutely have to is critical to success. Because ultimately, my interpretation of being an entrepreneur is like, you're just trying stuff. And when it works, you have a company. And when it doesn't, you're burning money, right? So like now I have this like cash cow that is allowing me, I tried 6 things last year. We're pursuing 2 of them in a major way, right? But like when you're bootstrapping, it's hard because you only have whatever is in front of you. And oftentimes your intuition is a very bad indicator of market viability. So you have to, and software is very expensive to develop also. So it's having this attitude towards money that like, it is very scarce until you really have something. And then I think shifting to the abundance mindset, but like still being disciplined on what you're spending on is like the most critical thing. And then the other thing would be read about what product market fit actually, what signs of it are. And until you have it, don't focus on anything else except for product market fit. Don't hire a sales guy, don't hire a marketer, don't try to do Facebook ads. Nothing is going to fucking work until that product is incredible. And the more incredible the product is, the easier it will be for you to do everything else.
In episode 20, I interviewed Jim Yu on how to sell enterprise SaaS.
I think the first thing is be very structured about how you do customer discovery and market discovery. I think you want to be able to find, right, the sweet spot. I alluded a little bit to this in our early days. Every Friday we'd go look through and group the different prospects and who we had pitched and what pitch resonated, what were the titles of the people that we sold to, and how did those deals progress. And we would systematically figure out, where do you have that wedge? Where do you have that sweet spot ICP? And so you want to keep iterating on that, and you'll find pattern. Once you find that pattern in there, you can start to rinse and repeat that. So I think in that early phase, it's all about have a structured way to iterate across different types of enterprises. So I think that's definitely one of the most important things to do.
And that's the end of the summary episode, which are my personal favorites. I hope you enjoyed listening to this because you get so much value in such a short amount of time. If you enjoyed any of the episodes, make sure you actually go ahead and listen to the full one. For now, could you do me a 5-second favor? Could you either review the podcast, give it a follow, hit subscribe, anything which is possible on a platform you're listening right now. It would help us to spread the word and help more founders like yourself. For now, I hope you enjoyed it and have a great day.